Between the hijab and the Iranian regime. At least 76 people have been killed after a week of unrest and protest sparked by the death of a 22-year-old Kurdish woman, who was held in custody by Iran's Hijab morality police. Mahsa Amini was reportedly tortured and suffered a head injury that ultimately led to her death a few days after her detainment. Ever since, protests that sparked off in Iran's northwest have spread like wildfire across the country, including the capital Tehran and the Shia religious city of Qom. The Iranian government responded by deploying water cannons, live shootings, and by shutting down the internet to prevent further mobilizations. The international condemnation has been widespread. The Iranian regime has been condemned for clamping down on the protests, imposing the hijab on its population, and for shutting down the internet. The UN even issued a statement criticizing the regime in Tehran. Western coverage has focused on the burning of the hijab by some protesters in the aftermath of Mahsa Amini's death. The clerical regime in Iran has been in power for over 4 decades. When the clerics took power back in 1979 after overthrowing the Pahlavi regime, they created numerous pillars and state institutions to maintain their grip on power. They used Shiism to justify their rule and pushed Iranian nationalism and ideas of reviving the Persian Empire to gain the support of the Iranian street. Their grip on the country's economy, extensive corruption, waste of resources on regional projects, oppression, and mismanagement have all contributed to the Iranian people losing confidence and resenting the religious-based political system. In 1979, Iran's population was 39 million, it has now doubled to 83 million. Today, around 80% of Iran's population was born after the 1979 revolution, meaning that there is a large chunk of the populace who has no relationship with the clerics. This is a frightening fact for the clerics. As a result, since the domination of parliament by hardliners and President Ibrahim Raisy's election last year, the clerics have worked to strengthen revolutionary ideals and principles among the populace. This has involved invigorating the teaching of revolutionary ideology in schools, colleges, and universities, as well as increasing the recruitment of people to be part of paramilitary forces. In addition to this, the morality police has found a new lease of life, as well as instructions to clamp down hard on those who violate revolutionary ideas, with many women facing the brunt of its aggression because of their non-proper compliance with wearing the hijab. With forcing of the revolutionary ideology along with the vast array of problems facing the Iranian people, it was only a matter of time before a spark, Mahsa's death, unleashed another wave of protests directed at the regime and its head, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Prominent Iranian sociologist Mohammad Fazeli from Tehran University said that the protests are not simply the outcome of recent events, but they are the product of more than 40 years of bad governance in Iran. Fazeli said that there are many unresolved problems that have been accumulating during the past 4 decades, without any attempt by the government to address them. He said, when President Raisi says he will probe into Mahsa Amini's death, the people cannot trust him because similar cases in the past remained unresolved. Meanwhile, the absence of hope for the future after several decades of high inflation, near-zero economic growth, the decline of the administrative system and many other factors have led to anger towards the Iranian regime, and many Iranians no longer are scared to protest and speak out against the failed rule of clerics. There have been many scenes of hijab burning in the protests. This is something the Western media has jumped on to attack the Iranian regime's imposition of Islam. In a New York Times interview, Manu, whose daughter has been taking part in the protests, signed an online petition calling for the abolition of the morality police. Manu said she wears the headscarf willingly and, "I'm religious, but I'm fed up with the hypocrisy and lies of this regime treating us ordinary people like dirt." Manu, much like many in Iran, can see that the regime uses Islam for legitimacy, but has pursued policies both domestically and abroad to entrench its longevity only. For many in Iran, the fact that regime officials and their families take regular holidays to Western capitals and wear attire that is less than desirable is the hypocrisy they have had enough of. Their anger is at a regime that is not representative of them, and the hijab incidents are to show disapproval of the regime rather than challenging the Islamic attire. Iranian women, although wrong and improper to remove the hijab and burn it from an Islamic perspective, are venting their anger at the Iranian regime by attacking a key pillar of the Iranian revolution, the enforced wearing of the hijab. Rather than address the problem through raising the strength of Islamic culture and atmosphere in Iranian society, the regime unleashed its thugs under the cover of morality police to commit injustices against Iranian women. It is natural after facing injustices that women will be angry and react. The burning of the hijab is not the right way, but as has been seen, the protests have taken an anti-regime stance and the protesters want the clerics out and to be accounted for their crimes and injustices. The Iranian people have taken advantage of the death of Mahsa to vent their anger directly at the regime. Ahwazi Arabs are on the streets, so are the Baluchis in Sistan Balochistan, and the Kurds in the north of Iran, all of whom have deep grievances with the regime due to its mistreatment and heavy military deployment in their territories. These protests will dwindle down either through brute force or concessions from the regime. They are unlikely to bring the regime down as there is no central leader, and they have not mobilized rural areas which are the support base of the clerics. In addition, the army and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, IRGC, remain intact, with no news of people breaking away. If this were to happen, it would likely create a Syria-type situation, with the prospect of a civil war. This is a far-fetched scenario at the moment. The bastion of human rights, the United States, is relatively quiet on what has happened in Iran, as it is more interested in reviving the Iranian nuclear deal so that it can shift its attention to China. The Iranian women and people in general need to understand that Islam is not the cause of their problems, but the corrupt Iranian regime that has used the cloak of Islam to hide their true motives and intentions. The Iranian people need more Islam, not less, and this is what needs to be seen in their slogans and rhetoric along with denunciations of the regime and clerical class.